Information. The reference for this, there's 2 or 3 references for this information on fear that I highly recommend. That on the back page, you'll notice it says, on the second page it says at the very bottom there, partially based on Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Terrific book. I don't know if any of you have seen that or not, but it's as good as a book I've seen, as good as a book, it's the best book I've seen on just dealing with fear. There's others that are really good. Running from Safety is my personal favorite. It's more of a fiction piece written by Richard Bach, but it's just an outstanding read. And after you read that book, you just feel like, well, I'll just take on the world now. Because you realize how wimpy your fears are when you read through that book, and you realize, my goodness, I'm just going to start going for something. Another book that I highly recommend that is along those lines, written by Tony Robbins, called Awaken the Giant Within. That's a really thick book, but it's fantastic for getting your head in the right place with respect to what we've been talking about, as well as the identity component of fear. So I want to walk through this a little bit today, and let's create some discussion about this. Try to think in your mind. So kind of to start off, put in your heads, bless you, put in your heads something that you feel like might be an unreasonable fear. Something that, not, like we said last time, not cliff diving from 60 feet up. That's a reasonable fear. But just put in your heads any kind of a fear where you think, well, I'm afraid to, and then finish that sentence. Primarily socially related, or your own goal setting related, or whatever that is. Okay? And with that in mind, I want to go through these principles, and so that you can apply it. We'll apply it in a few different ways, but I want you to apply it to something that you currently sense that is, a little bit tenuous for you, and watch how the nervousness about it kind of just fizzles away. So if we go through this, it says fear is a belief that an outcome will include some pain or discomfort. So fear is always a focus on the future. Remember when we talked about mindfulness, we realized that fear doesn't happen, or stress doesn't happen in the present moment, neither does fear. Fear is a thinking ahead of something, and it's the inclusion that something painful is going to happen. Now we realize 99.9 whatever % of the time those pains are not physical. Okay? It's pretty, somewhat the same as stress. But when we have that feeling or thought that this is going to be painful, that avoiding that pain is the fear. Okay, does anyone have an example that when I said that we might want to play with just a little bit, when I said, think of something that might be fearful to you, and let's explore what we mean when we say that there's a possible sensation of pain or discomfort in there. Does anyone have one that they want to throw out here?
When you play catch with a dog, when you take the ball out of the dog's mouth, I'm always afraid to have my fingers touch his teeth.
To get bitten by it, or just touch the teeth?
Just to touch the teeth, because I'm afraid it'll hurt if they bite.
Okay, that's kind of a reasonable fear, it seems to me.
I don't know. Those were big fears, that's all I could come up with.
That's what you see, if I don't want to be bit, I don't want to stick my hand in the dog's mouth either. That's a real pain. Kind of a good idea to not do that. Same like an alligator. You don't stick your hand in an alligator. You don't want that. I sound
What about something like being alone?
Okay, so being afraid of being alone. Okay, so what is the pain that you're making up or discomfort you're making up?
Like in a room or not? Like throughout life? What kind of alone?
I would say technically like not like just by yourself, like being alone is in, you know, like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to compare.
So on the one hand, you could say going to a movie all by yourself, scared to death to do that. Okay, that's maybe on one hand, but on the other is just not having somebody by my side for that I like. I prefer having someone by my side, but I'm afraid that that won't happen. Okay, so the pain that we're making up when we have that thought is what? What's the pain or discomfort that we're making up?
I will be alone and therefore that'll hurt me.
Yeah, somehow that's going to be painful. That's going to be uncomfortable. Well, have you been alone before? Have you been by yourself before? Did anything painful happen? Not usually. The dark is a good one, afraid of the dark. So, let's see. Can you turn the lights off? Oh yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, okay. So, okay, so even if we made this like way darker, so what's the fear that you have when you when somebody says I'm afraid of the dark? What is it that they're afraid of?
What they can't see.
Yeah, and their inability to see stuff makes them think that something bad is going to happen because they can't control the environment. They can't control what's happening. Now, how do you what's the reality there?
There is something triple.
Turn on the lights and nothing changes except our vision. Yeah, you could theoretically fall down the steps, I guess. And that would be an appropriate fear. But being in the dark itself is just an absence of light. Nothing changes as far as you being there.
Well, when I was little, and sometimes it still comes back. It's funny, but in our basement we have like this storage room, and my mom would always have us go down and get something for her when she was cooking or whatever. And my brother would always say, "Don't let the boogeyman get you." And like I knew logically that it wasn't real, but when I would go down, I would find myself panicking. Like I would grab the phone and just run upstairs as fast as I could. And still, like to this day, sometimes I go down there and I get that squirting feeling like I'm gonna die if I go down here alone. And it's like a legitimate fear of me still sometimes.
Well, it was a legitimate fear what?
Inside of me sometimes.
You think it's a legitimate fear?
I think it is. Like I literally get afraid.
Has anyone ever
There's no
popped out?
No.
If there were some great music going down there, some very scary music, oh man, then it'd be all over, wouldn't it? I mean, that's what they do in scary movies, is they say, okay, you're going into a dark place, and they turn the music on, and suddenly it's really, really scary. But there's nothing there.
Okay, so what if, well obviously boogeyman doesn't exist, but what if you have had an experience where the boogeyman jumped out, and so now you have a fear of that because you feel like it's legitimate because something bad has happened to you in that scenario. Does that
Okay.
make sense? So then how do you deal with that fear?
Tap that out. See, the likelihood of that, you have to measure the likelihood.
Okay.
You know, and assess, is this going to happen to me? It might have once, you know, but the likelihood of that happening again If it's 0, is you just, oh, well, I guess it's okay. Our conditioning makes us want to feel afraid. But we have to realize that most of the things that we're afraid of, it's not. It's like Mark Twain said, you know, I worried about a lot of things, most of which, I had a lot of problems, most of which never happened.
Where would a fear of heights come in? Because like if you're walking on the edge of a cliff and it's a really great drop off, that would be more of a safety one. But if you're like at an amusement park and pretty much completely safe and you're like you just panic, or say you're in an elevator and the likelihood of the elevator dropping is pretty low in today's elevators.
Yeah, elevators.
But anytime you like get that like your stomach kind of goes up and then comes down, like you like, I do. But as a kid, I got stuck in an elevator by myself. So I don't know if that's where it comes from, but like if I can feel, if it's a rough elevator, like in an older building or whatever, and I can feel that coming up, like I get scared that I'm gonna fall all the way to the basement. And Tower of Terror scarred me for life. Like I could not breathe for half an hour.
It's a Olpin ride.
It's a
Disneyland ride.
You go up the 13 floors and then it drops you faster than gravity.
Do people get hurt on it?
No, but I was.
So, well, let's hold on to that until
Because I
we
mean,
get
part
to
of that's
6.
like a safety. Okay, I was gonna say part of it is, and then a lot of it isn't. But
Let's hang on to that question until we get to number 6. Number 2, nothing in the world is inherently fearful. What does that mean? Nothing in the world is inherently fearful.
you don't know to be afraid of it until you're like taught or
Okay,
shown to
What
be
else?
afraid.
We create them.
what did you say?
Not everybody has the same fears.
No. There's nothing out there that universally causes everyone to be afraid of it. There's nothing out there. You know, think of the thing that you're most afraid of, and there's probably someone who would have a blast doing it.
Getting eaten by a shark?
Yeah. There
Well,
are
that's a
some
good
people
one.
that.
Yeah, like a soul server.
I think I know what you're trying to get to,
But even like death, some people aren't afraid of death, and some are terrified. So
Grandpa could wait.
yeah.
People who are flying into the buildings, it's a good thing to know. Look what they got ahead of them.
Yeah, go then.
I still haven't found anything that if you didn't know, let's say that you were, we'll use sharks because that couldn't possibly be one. But if you took an infant and you set it in a place where there were sharks, it would not know to be afraid of it. Not saying that's a good thing to do, obviously.
But inherent.
But they have learned to be afraid of sharks. We've learned to be afraid of sharks. You know, and really, after Jaws came out, no one went into the ocean because suddenly they were scary places. Remember when we were at South Carolina, we were at Myrtle Beach. We were there, and we went out on the ocean, we were playing, and they didn't have very good waves over there, but it was pretty fun. And then the next day, we went to this aquarium. It was this place where you can learn all about ocean life and stuff. And we went in there, our family went into this place, and there was a person who said, the place where you were out yesterday, they said, in other words, this area right in front of where this aquarium thing is, this center, there are hundreds of sharks at any time out there. Do you think we went back out in the ocean? My kids wouldn't. I didn't feel anything the first time, and nobody ever gets hurt from those sharks, but just the idea somebody had trained them to be afraid that any kind of shark equals I might have pain, so I'm going to avoid it. Does that make sense? But until we learn it, they say that kids have two fears, maybe. Loud noises and falling. Maybe. All other fears that we have are learned. If they are all learned, then by definition, they can be unlearned.
And say even falling, with infants or toddlers are learning to walk, they fall. If you downplay it, get
Yeah.
up. Then they totally, or
Yeah.
most of the time,
No,
9
yeah.
times out of 10, they don't even cry. So that would be even,
Still, jury's out.
If it's the article I'm thinking of, wasn't it talking about from heights? They're afraid of falling from heights.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a visual clip that they have where they go, well, I tend, there's something inherent about them being like at an edge and looking down that says, don't go there.
and they just have a dad who throws them around, they lose that.
Okay, so if nothing is inherently fearful, then all fears by definition are learned, meaning that they can be unlearned. We're not stuck to being afraid of elevators. We might want to be afraid of elevators for whatever reason. We might want to be afraid of, asking somebody to help us with something, or asking the waitress for some more to fix the food that's too cold. We might think, oh, well, I do this. Then we don't get what we want.
So would that be like because usually something like that would stem because you don't want to be embarrassed, so you're afraid of the embarrassment you would cause yourself?
The thoughts, the what will they think?
Okay.
Oh, they're going to think that I'm not a very good customer or whatever. And that thought, it's the same as guys asking for directions. Guys don't ask for directions because they don't want to appear like they can't get to something. And so they don't ask, they don't, because that person will think. What will they think? Remember? Discussion? The person will think something about them and they don't want that. Hence they don't go get it.
There's not just so many people are afraid of public speaking.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second, because that's the ultimate silly fear. Now, this next one says, there's no pain in our discomfort zones except what we create. So, if we analyze our comfort zones, it kind of looks like this. Here's our comfort zone. This is us. And we tend to like to be in comfortable places. We tend to gravitate toward our comfort zones. We tend to do the things that are comfortable to us because we really don't like pain. We'll do more to avoid pain than anything else. Okay? Now, we think that this discomfort zone outside of our comfort zones is painful. We think we don't go there because there's going to be some pain. But if we analyze it accurately, there never is physical pain. And the perfect example is every one of you stood in front of all the rest of us and you said stuff and you stood up and you managed yourself just fine and nobody got hurt. You might have made up stuff in your head about what people are thinking of you, but that's not the same as getting hurt. If I ask the waitress to heat up my dish, and I think, oh, that's uncomfortable, and then I do it, am I ever hurt? Great, no? No, of course not. She's not going to come and slam the dish in your face. Here's your warm plate. She'll probably kind of like it, because then if she does a good job, she'll get a bigger tip.
So what about those reports on the secrets of waitresses and chefs when they spit in your food?
They don't do that. I don't know.
I don't know.
That's that discomfort thing.
I worked at a pizza place once, and when I was in high school, when people would come in from rival schools, we would put anchovies under their pepperonis. We'd watch them eat it. It was great.
Oh my god.
That's funny. That's
That's a great story.
I think it was funny. You can analyze that. I don't know about what goes on. I'm sure that there's all kinds of things that go on, and I'd rather not know. That's why we have a liver. That's why we have a liver. All the bad things that happen get taken care of. Does that make sense? There's no pain in our discomfort zones.
What about when somebody that's close to you dies and it is uncomfortable? Are we supposed to allow ourselves to feel that discomfort?
Oh, I'm not saying that you don't want to have any emotions. I mean, you should have all the emotions. You should have all of them. But it says what we create. It's okay to create sorrow. There's nothing wrong with being really ticked off at somebody. Just realize that you're choosing to have that, and it's okay. It's all right. No big deal. I wouldn't want to walk around life without feeling, what life has. That's not being alive. But also, I want to be clear that when I choose to be sad about something, I'm sorrowing about that event. Not, oh, he's making me feel lonely, sad, whatever.
You don't want to let fear run your life.
Exactly. Yeah. And we always like to bring up the almost exceptions. I'm way more concerned about moment-to-moment, mundane living where we think, oh, should I go up there and talk to that professor? No, I don't think I want to.
You're scared.
Right? That's the thing that Maggie's saying, where the fear runs your life instead of the decision to go talk to that person to clear up some problem. Somebody dies, those are kind of big things that happen so infrequently compared to our moment-to-moment, I don't know where I am. Should I ask directions? I don't know. I'm too afraid to ask. We must adopt the feeling of assurance that we can handle it. Now, there's one place that we can always look that will prove to us that we can handle it. Where is that? How can we be absolutely sure that we can probably handle this? Yeah, our past experience. We can go, well, I asked somebody for directions before, nothing happened. Except I got directions. I went and talked to that professor before, nothing happened except we talked. Why would this be any different? And that's the case nearly all the time. Why would this be any different? We can handle it. We'll hit this again in a minute. We must dissociate the pain with the steps and the outcome, determine where the pain is, and assess the reality. Now, what I mean by this is this. And we're going to use the speaking in front of a group of people, public speaking as an example. When it says dissociate the pain with the steps and the outcome. So what I mean by that is, so let's say that you're next. You're next, and you're going to speak or perform, whatever. Okay? Everyone with me here? You ever been next? So you're next, and bless you. Is there any pain happening? Let's say that I'm next to speak. Is there any pain happening now? I say? My name gets called. Now I speak to us for the next one. This happened to me 2 times last week where I got introduced. I thought for a second, I thought, oh, I guess I should be nervous, but then I went through this process, exactly what we're doing here. So, safe here, right? Okay, now we get introduced, we're walking to the place that's in front of everybody. Safe there, did anything happen? Here to here? Okay. If you trip, okay, well then that's something that you do. Nobody hurts themselves tripping usually. Now you could make up that people are having a good time with you on that trip. You know, making fun of you. That's what you make up though. You have no idea. Remember, you have no way of knowing. So then you stand up here and you say some words. Okay, words happen. And as you notice, as you're saying some words, that some people fall asleep. Other people don't pay attention. Other people walk out. Man, somebody walked out on me. Well, what might be the real reason why she walked out? They had to go to the bathroom or something. It had nothing to do, small letter, had nothing to do with you. But we make it up and I go, oh man, I'm going to say this. Oh no. No pain here. You're always safe. Okay? Then you're done, and whatever happens out here is out of your control, nor do you have an idea of what they thought because none of them told you. And you go sit down. Are you still safe? Not one point in there was there pain. So what I mean when we say dissociate is we let go of the process and the outcome from the pain of it, because there never is any. Isn't that cool? And you can do that with every single thing. See, what we do instead is we make up the worst possible outcomes. We make up all the worst possible things, and that's what we dwell on. We're just making that up too. But what if we instead went through each place and went, am I going to be safe there? Yeah, of course. Am I going to be safe with that part? Yeah, of course. Am I going to be safe with that part? Yeah, of course. Then what do you decide if you figured out that you're going to be safe? What is it that you decide when you figure that out?
You can handle it?
Yeah, I mean, go for it. I mean, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do? And this is how you not be afraid. The only way to overcome fear is through it. Or tap on it. The only way to get better at handling fear is by practice. Or tap on it. Let's hit a few of these ideas that are so good. I just kind of grabbed a bunch of things from the best sources I could find. Life's about growth. Growth involves giving up something without knowing for certain if the next step will be any better. If this weren't the case, we would call it sure thing taking rather than risk taking. Isn't that great? You never know. You never know what the next moment would be like. It's all unknown. But your past tells you, made it to this point. Been some tricky outcomes. Helen Keller's words on risking and security. Security is mostly a superstition. It doesn't exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. And I like this. Any risk that is important for growth will continually reappear until it is settled. Why do you think that is? We haven't gotten to spiritual well-being in here yet. We'll be playing with that big time in a little while, but this is one of those spiritual well-being principles. Any risk that is important for growth will continually reappear until it is settled. What do you think that means? What do you think?
The thing that comes to my mind is like a skill that'll help you in the future. Like you have to take a risk of, I'm going to do my best on this and see if that's enough. And usually we're afraid like, oh, it's not going to be enough. So then we usually don't take it and then we don't grow and you're like, oh, well, if I do that, then I get this.
See, I think there is a part of us that is a bigger part of us than our conscious mind. And it knows how to make us grow. And it knows that going from here, our comfort zone, to our discomfort zone is how we grow. We become, whenever we step out into our so-called discomfort zone, we become bigger, we grow, okay? And that part of us knows that, and it's going to keep giving you opportunities for that growth to happen. Some people shrink. But if we get this, what we're saying, then we start to go, okay, I'll just try this. Here's another opportunity, here's another opportunity, until you decide, okay, I can do that. The knowledge that you can handle anything that comes your way is the key to allowing yourself to take risks. If you knew you could handle anything that came your way, what would you possibly have to fear? The answer is nothing. Really, I mean, if you just get that in your head. If that were the only affirmation that you ever said to yourself over and over again is, I can handle this. I think when you start going, I can handle this. Cool, I can handle that. Cool, I can do that. Cool. And then you just keep trying new things that are outside of your comfort zone. All you have to do is diminish your fear. To diminish your fears, develop more trust in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. Why do we sense we can't handle stuff? An overriding be careful mentality. Tell me if this isn't accurate. How many of you, when you left home on a regular day, did your mom say, be careful? Stay safe. My wife does this. Stay safe. Just once, I'd love to hear somebody, when the kids are leaving, say, take risks. Try something that's out of your comfort zone today. No, we say, be careful, because we don't want to get hurt. Don't meet anyone new, because you might get hurt. Don't do that. Don't try a new sport, because you might get hurt. People will laugh at you.
What if it's to be practical though? My son wanted to play football, and he runs track really well. He could even get a scholarship, and I didn't want him to break himself in football, so he can't run.
There's some.
So is that me not being settled with it, not being comfortable with it?
Did he want to play football bad?
He did, and I didn't want him to, because I'd like him to get a scholarship. Less of a burden for me, eh? And he's a very good runner. And he's a senior. He could break himself as a sophomore or junior, and I wouldn't have such a problem with it. But as a senior, that makes a bigger difference.
You're gonna have to deal with that.
Just tell me I'm right. That'll make me feel better.
I can see the wisdom that you're saying.
I think he's gonna go.
Football is a dangerous sport.
It is. It's mean.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always say the same. Instead of saying be careful, I would just say have fun.
That's what I say.
And
I've
had a lot of people ask me, why do you always say that? I mean, life is not about fun.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sitting there going, why isn't it? And it's just funny because some of my family have a very hard time when we say have fun.
That is what I always say to my kids too. I say, when they're leaving, I say, have a fun time. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the heck out of yourselves. Really have a blast. I was talking with my wife yesterday, and they were talking about their parents and her dad. We realized he has no idea how to have fun. He's the hardest working guy I've ever met. helps more people than the rest of us put together. All he does, he's retired now, and all he does is help people who can't help themselves with stuff. Wonderful man. He never has any moments of having a blast. I think you want to have a little bit of balance between all of those great things. You got a question about
I have a really illegitimate fear. I don't know if it's legitimate, but we've been to
legitimate or illegitimate?
like unreasonable.
Unreasonable, okay.
Me and my family, my parents and my brothers and sisters, we went to Africa this summer. We were visiting different countries in East Africa. And against my parents' will, we went to not the safe part of Somalia, but Mogadishu, which is like a war-torn part. We've always heard that it was war-torn, so me and my brother went there against my parents' will. And you'd hear like shooting and like random whistles and boom, and then the landmine goes off. But that wasn't my fear. My fear were these giant cockroaches, like that.
You're okay with bullets flying.
No, I wasn't scared of gunshots or anything, but I was in I saw this giant cockroach just close to us. I started yelling and crying and acting crazy, and my niece came over and she took a shoe and just like hit it. And she's just like, okay, why are you crying? I'm still crying and shaking from that cockroach, but nothing didn't have to do with the war or anything like that. And until this day, like if I remember
Upside down
Somalia,
about that.
yeah, if I remember Somalia, I remember the giant cockroaches, not the bullets, not the bombs going off. It's just those really scary cockroaches.
That's funny.
Got 6 legs, it's not very fun.
And they fly there, so
Cockroaches fly.
over there they fly. They're huge and they fly.
Target practice.
Oh my God.
My mom, when we leave, she used to tell me and my brother, be safe.
Be safe, yeah.
But we are contrary people. It's
good for you.
genetic, so we say
It's
no.
genetic.
So we say no. So then she started telling us to be good. Would that fall in the same category as be careful?
Frequently.
Yeah. We still say no, but.
I don't know. That's, again, yours to call on the good part. It's your we have to get in our heads that risking is fun. We have to, because until we risk it, step out there into the unknown. I had this experience when I do a lot of bike riding. And on one occasion I went mountain bike riding up at Deer Valley. They have this lift. Back then, I don't know if they still do, but back then they had a lift that you can put your bike on and then you just go up. And you get off and then you bike down, right? And then same thing, and I did it about 4 or 5 times, and I got to the top and I went, everyone's goes on. It was an obviously well-groomed trail coming down. And I got up to the top one time and I saw that there was this trail that went off up. And it was just a deer trail of some kind. It wasn't a very well-groomed trail. I thought, I wonder what's up there. You know, and I had no idea, and I was alone and no maps. I wasn't maybe very bright in doing this, but this is how I come to try to do things most of the time, is that I wonder what's up there. Especially mountain biking, I've adopted this. I wonder what's there, because I know it's there. I've already been there. So I went up, and I kept going up and up and up, and just getting more and more thin, the trees, and pretty soon I came to a place that was above all the trees, and it was just, probably was 45 minutes or an hour driving up. And a couple times I had to get off and carry my bike over some stuff that I couldn't get through. And I got to this point at the top, and it was just totally quiet. There was not a sound. Occasional hawk would fly over. And I stayed up there for about a half hour, and I just took in the view. It was the most amazing view. They told me that I could see into, I could see Utah Valley. I could see the other side of the Great Salt Lake. They said when I talked to people who told me where I was, when I told them where I was, they said, oh yeah, what you can see to Wyoming and beyond Logan from that one spot is so high. And it just struck me like it never had before. I went, this is what you get when you go for the unknown. This is what I get by trying what I don't know and seeing what happens. And sure, there's been times when I've been biking or running when, you know, you crash. But we seem to always be okay. We seem to always get through things, even in the most crazy circumstances. And so I said to myself, as soon as I said, this is how I want to be most all the time, is if I don't know what it's going to be like, then that's a cue to me to try to see what it's about. I already know what's the no. No, and that's cool. But the unknown, man, that's where the juice is. Just these last few comments on the first page, and then we'll call this good. You can read through the rest of it, and if you want to, get that book. It's really, really a good one. Self-affirming statements on fear. The fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. Relaxing to the possibility that this is the purpose of living. In other words, this action of going from here to here, that might be one of our greatest purposes in life, is to experience, to sense, oh, there's some discomfort there that I'm making up, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Remember our mantra that we said, oh, what the, please go for it anyway. That's, you're here, and you sense this is your next thing. And you say, oh, what's the belief? Go for it anyway. Watch what happens when you say that. Really. The only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. The only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. The doing comes before the feeling better part. Does that make sense to you guys? Mm-hmm. The doing comes before. You're always going to feel a little bit, or at least you might choose to feel a little bit like, I don't know if I want to ask for directions or get my food changed to a hotter meal or something. You're not going to feel better until you do. But if you understand that, then you just, okay, well, I don't feel so good. I'm anxious about it, so okay, good. I'll feel better once I do. It's the coolest thing. Not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm on unfamiliar territory, but so is everyone else. Fear isn't a signal to retreat, but a green light to move ahead. You ever thought of that? When you feel fear, and this goes back to that part where it says, any risk that is important for growth will continually reappear until it is settled. Fear isn't a signal to retreat, but a green light to move ahead. If you have that feeling, what if you change that feeling, not change the feeling, but let that feeling be the motivator that said, I guess I'm supposed to do this. I don't think those opportunities would present themselves to you if you weren't supposed to do it from a higher perspective so that you grow. Interesting idea. Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes with a feeling of helplessness. The challenges we face are what make us grow. That's the real outcome. Security is not having things, it's handling things. And so, again, I ask the question to you, and it's one that I keep asking myself, because I'm still a really small person. I know there's so much room for growth. In fact, I don't think anyone's found a limit to human potential. I don't think there's a limit. and I'm this little dot in here, because I know there's way more. But I keep asking myself, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid? And then, when you think, okay, that's what I would probably do, then your next thought is, oh, what the bleep, go for it anyway. And watch how you just keep doing more stuff, and pretty soon you become comfortable with most everything. Really a cool idea. Any thoughts about that? Oh, what the bleep, go for it. Okay, we'll see you guys Wednesday. We'll